You ever met a man with no friends? A dude who just be walking through life solo, talking to nobody, sitting at the dinner table with his own echo? Let me tell you something. That ain't normal. See, life ain't meant to be walked alone. A man with no friends, that's dangerous. You got nobody to check you, nobody to call you out on your mess, and worst of all, nobody to celebrate with when you finally win. You ever seen somebody get good news and got nobody to tell? That's pain right there. Imagine hitting the lottery and all you got is your TV screen saying, congratulations. Ain't nobody clapping, ain't nobody shouting, just you sitting there in silence. That ain't life, man. A man walking through life without friends is like a car running on an empty tank. Eventually, it's going to break down. Life is not designed for isolation, no matter how strong or independent you think you are. Every single person, no matter how successful, wealthy, or powerful, needs companionship. There's a reason why people celebrate in groups. Think about it. When you win something, what's the first thing you do? You pick up your phone to call somebody. When something good happens, the joy isn't even complete until you share it with someone. That's because life is meant to be experienced together. Now, some men convince themselves they don't need anybody. They say, I'm good on my own, don't need friends, I don't trust nobody. But let's be real. What they're really saying is, I don't want to be vulnerable. See, it's easy to pretend like you don't care when deep down, you do. Because the truth is, when you don't have people around you, when you're always by yourself, you start talking to your own thoughts. And let me tell you, your thoughts will mess you up. That's why isolation is dangerous. That's why when people go to prison, the worst punishment they can get is solitary confinement. Because even the hardest criminals can't take being completely alone. Think about the greatest moments in life. They all involve people. Whether it's your first big achievement, your biggest lesson, your greatest comeback, there was somebody there. Because people make life rich. And I ain't talking about money, I'm talking about fulfillment. Some men think money is enough. They grind their whole lives, stacking up cash, buying everything they ever wanted. But when they finally sit down at the table, there's nobody there. No laughter, no stories, just silence. And silence can be loud when you realize you built a life that nobody's a part of. Let's flip it. Imagine you're struggling. Imagine you're going through the hardest season of your life. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe your marriage is falling apart. Maybe you just feel stuck. Now, if you got no friends, who do you turn to? Who do you call? Who's going to remind you who you really are when you're doubting yourself? If the answer is nobody, that's a problem. Because life will hit you, and when it does, you better have somebody in your corner. Even the strongest men need friends. The most powerful kings in history had councils. The best fighters have trainers. The smartest men in the world have mentors. Ain't nobody doing this thing called life alone. And the ones who try, they either burn out, break down, or realize too late that they should have let people in. Some men will say, well, I've been hurt before. People switched up on me. I trusted the wrong folks. And I get that. Betrayal hurts. Fake friends exist. But that don't mean you stop trusting everybody. That don't mean you cut everybody off. It just means you got to choose better. You got to surround yourself with real ones, people who uplift you, people who challenge you to be better, people who want to see you win, not just watch you. Because there's a difference between company and companionship. A crowd don't mean connection. A following don't mean friendship. And a handshake don't mean loyalty. A real friend will check you when you're wrong. A real friend will celebrate when you're up and stand beside you when you're down. A real friend don't let you settle for less than your potential. If you don't got at least one person like that in your life, it's time to rethink how you're moving. Because there's strength in numbers and there's wisdom in counsel. Men who walk alone usually do so because they've convinced themselves they have to. But that's a lie. It's pride. It's fear. It's a defense mechanism, and it's costing them more than they realize. because you can't get through life without people. You weren't meant to. Pride is one of the biggest reasons why men end up alone. It's not that they don't have the opportunity to build friendships. It's that they refuse to take the steps needed to keep them. Pride will make a man act like he don't need nobody when deep down he's struggling with loneliness. It will make a man ignore his mistakes instead of apologizing. It will make him push people away instead of admitting he needs support. It's a silent killer, and most of the time men don't even realize it's working against them. A lot of men walk through life with the attitude of, I don't need friends, I don't need nobody checking up on me, I'm good by myself. But let's be real, that's just pride talking. That's a defense mechanism. It's easier to act like you don't care than to admit that you do. Because if you admit it, that means you got to do something about it. And doing something about it means you got to humble yourself. You got to be willing to reach out first, to check in first, to say sorry first. And for a lot of men, that's the hardest thing to do. Some men would rather sit alone in silence than pick up the phone and say, hey man, I was wrong. They would rather convince themselves that they don't need that friendship than admit they miss having somebody to talk to. They would rather act like nothing is wrong than admit they feel disconnected. And the crazy part is, the people they lost, they're probably waiting for them to reach out. But pride won't let them do it. It'll keep telling them if they cared, they'd reach out to you first. It'll keep whispering you don't need them anyway. And before you know it, years have passed, relationships have died, and all that's left is regret. Pride also makes men too stubborn to ask for help. Some men are drowning in their own problems, but instead of reaching out, they just suffer in silence. They could be struggling financially, mentally, emotionally, but instead of calling up a friend and saying, hey man, I need some advice, they just bottle it up. They walk around like everything's fine when inside they're falling apart. And that's dangerous because pressure with no release, it'll break you down. There are men out there struggling in their marriages because they're too proud to talk to somebody who's been through it. There are men out there losing opportunities because they're too proud to ask for guidance. There are men out there holding on to past grudges, missing out on real friendships because they're too proud to say, hey man, I shouldn't handle things that way. Pride is robbing them of wisdom, of growth, of connection. And the saddest part is, they don't even see it happening. Some men also use pride as an excuse to avoid vulnerability. They don't want to let nobody in because that means exposing their weaknesses. And in their mind, weakness equals failure. But that's a lie. Weakness equals being human. Everybody got struggles. Everybody got insecurities. Everybody got moments where they feel lost. But if you never let nobody see that side of you, if you always act like you got it all figured out, people stop trying to get close. They assume you don't need them. And after a while, you look around and realize you really don't have anybody. Not because people didn't want to be there, but because you never let them. And let's be honest, pride don't just affect friendships, it affects family too. Some men talk to their own brother in years over something that don't even matter no more. Some men holding on to grudges with their fathers, refusing to forgive, and all it's doing is stealing their peace. And some men got sons looking up to them, but they so prideful they won't even tell them, son, I love you and I'm proud of you. They think being tough all the time makes them strong, but real strength is knowing when to let your guard down. Pride makes a man choose being right over being happy. It makes him choose his ego over his relationships. And at the end of the day, it leaves him empty. Because no matter how strong, successful, or independent you think you are, life is better when you got real people around you. But pride, it'll convince you to push everybody away before you ever realize what you're losing. Loneliness is dangerous. It's not just about feeling sad or bored. It's about what happens to a man when he has nobody to check on him, nobody to talk to, nobody to bring him back when he starts drifting too far. A man with no friends has no accountability, and that's a dangerous place to be. When you don't have people in your life to call you out, to challenge you, or to push you to be better, you start slipping. Not all at once, but little by little. You make excuses for bad decisions. You convince yourself you're fine when you're not. And before you know it, you're stuck in a cycle you can't pull yourself out of. A man with no friends is left alone with his own thoughts. And let me tell you, your thoughts can be a dangerous place when there's no outside voice speaking life into you. The mind can trick you. It can make you believe you're not good enough, that nobody cares, that there's no point in trying anymore. It can turn small failures into massive regrets, make minor setbacks feel like the end of the road. When you don't have a friend to remind you who you are, to tell you to keep pushing, to lift you up when life gets heavy, you start to drown in your own negativity. And the worst part is, you won't even realize it's happening. Loneliness can make a man lose his drive. When you don't have people around you who believe in you, who push you, who remind you of your potential, you start settling. You start telling yourself, this is good enough. You lose that fire, that hunger, that motivation to go after more. Because success is sweeter when you have people to celebrate with, and failure is easier to bounce back from when you have people to encourage you. But when you're alone, everything feels heavier. The wins feel empty, the losses feel permanent. It becomes easy to just exist instead of actually living. A man with no friends also lacks perspective. When you have people in your life, they give you different viewpoints, different experiences, different advice that can help you see things in a way you never would have on your own. But when you're alone, you're stuck in your own way of thinking. If you start believing something negative about yourself, who's there to correct you? If you start making bad decisions, who's there to warn you? Without that outside input, you can end up stuck in cycles that could have been broken if you just had the right people around you. Isolation also makes it easier for bad habits to take over. When nobody is watching, it's easy to let yourself slip into things that aren't good for you. Whether it's unhealthy habits, negative thinking, or even destructive behaviors, it all grows in isolation. Accountability is what keeps a man. It's what keeps him focused. It's what makes him think twice before making a decision that could cost him in the long run. But when there's no one to hold you to a higher standard, it's easy to start lowering your own. Even the strongest men break when they have to carry everything on their own. That's why the most successful men have mentors. The best athletes have coaches. The greatest leaders have advisors. Nobody gets to the top alone. Nobody survives life struggles alone. And the ones who try, they either burn out, break down, or shut down completely. A man with no friends also has no one to share his victories with. Even if he works hard, even if he achieves great things, if he's doing it all alone, what's the point? Imagine reaching a goal you've been chasing for years, only to look around and realize there's no one there to celebrate with you. No one to say, I knew you could do it. No one to high five, to laugh with, to enjoy the moment with. Success without people to share it with is empty. There's a reason why the worst punishment in prison is solitary confinement. Even the hardest criminals, the toughest men, break when they're left alone long enough. Because humans weren't made to be isolated. We were created to connect, to love, to build, to encourage, and to be there for each other. A man with no friends might think he's fine, but deep down, he's missing something crucial. Because life, at its core, is about relationships. And when you don't have them, you're not really living, you're just existing. Vulnerability is one of the hardest things for a man to embrace, but it's also one of the most powerful. A lot of men walk through life with their guard up, acting like they got it all figured out, like nothing bothers them, like they don't need help. But deep down, every man has moments of doubt, fear, and struggle. The problem is too many men have been taught that showing any kind of weakness is unacceptable. They've been told to man up instead of speak up, to bury their feelings instead of express them, to handle everything on their own instead of leaning on somebody else. That mindset is dangerous. A man who never allows himself to be vulnerable is a man who will eventually break under the weight of everything he refuses to share. Holding in pain, stress, and emotions don't make a man stronger. It makes him bitter, angry, and eventually isolated. Because people don't connect with perfection, they connect with realness. Nobody wants to be around a man who acts like he's never wrong, never struggling, never in need of support. That kind of man pushes people away without even realizing it. Real friendships are built on honesty, not ego. When a man can open up and say, I'm going through something, that's when true connection happens. When he can admit, I don't have all the answers, that's when wisdom comes in. When he can say, I need help, that's when growth happens. But a man who refuses to do those things will find himself standing alone because nobody wants to be in a relationship. Whether it's a friendship, a brotherhood, or even a marriage where everything is one-sided. If you never let people see the real you, how can they truly know you? Some men think vulnerability is a weakness because they confuse it with complaining. There's a difference between dumping all your problems on someone and having a real conversation about what you're going through. There's a difference between being dramatic and being real. When a man is vulnerable, he's not asking for pity. He's allowing people to see that he's human. And when people see that, it creates trust. Because when you're honest with people, it makes them feel safe enough to be honest with you. Pride tells a man to keep his struggles to himself, but wisdom tells him to open up to the right people. Because the truth is, no man has all the answers. Even the strongest men need advice. Even the most successful men need guidance. Even the toughest men need a place where they can take off the armor and just be themselves. Being vulnerable doesn't mean telling everybody your business. It doesn't mean walking around sharing your problems with every person you meet. It means having a circle of real, solid people that you can trust with your struggles. It means having a friend you can call when life gets heavy. It means being able to sit down and say, I'm not okay, without feeling ashamed about it. Because the truth is everybody has moments when they're not okay. The difference is some men suffer in silence while others find strength in their relationships. Vulnerability is also key in growth. A man who never admits his weaknesses will never get better. A man who never asks for help will never learn. A man who never faces his emotions will never be fully at peace. Too many men walk through life carrying baggage they were never meant to carry alone. But because they refuse to be open, they never get the help they need to truly heal. Vulnerability also strengthens friendships. The strongest friendships aren't built on just good times. They're built on real moments. The moments where one man helps another get through something. The moments where trust is built because both people know they can count on each other. Friendships that last are the ones where both people can be real, not just strong. If you only let people see you when things are good, those friendships will always be surface level. But when you let people in, when you allow them to see your struggles and still stand beside you, that's when you build brotherhood. There are men out there struggling alone right now, not because they don't have people who care, but because they won't allow themselves to open up. They won't allow anyone to see that they're hurting. They won't admit that they need support. And the longer they hold it in, the heavier it gets. But the moment a man realizes that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's strength, that's the moment his life changes. Because real connection, real healing, real success, it all starts with being real. A man with no friends often becomes his own worst enemy. Without the right people around him, he starts believing every thought that enters his mind, even the ones that aren't true. The mind can be a battlefield. And when a man is left alone with nothing but his own thoughts, those thoughts can either push him forward or pull him down. When there's no one to challenge his thinking, no one to call him out when he's wrong, no one to remind him of the truth when he starts believing lies, he becomes trapped in his own perspective. And that's a dangerous place to be. Self-doubt creeps in faster when a man is isolated, when there's no one to encourage him, no one to remind him of his strengths, no one to tell him to keep going when things get tough. He starts questioning himself. He starts thinking he's not good enough, not smart enough, not capable enough. He convinces himself that failure is permanent, that success is out of reach, that there's no point in trying. And because there's nobody there to speak life into him, he accepts those thoughts as reality. A man with no friends also loses perspective on life. When he's always in his own head, he starts seeing things through a narrow lens. Problems seem bigger than they really are. Small issues feel like massive roadblocks. He gets stuck in his own way of thinking because there's nobody around to offer a different point of view. A real friend will tell you when you're overthinking. A real friend will remind you of the bigger picture. A real friend will help you see things clearly. But when a man has no friends, all he has is his own voice, and sometimes that voice isn't telling him the truth. Accountability is another thing that disappears when a man is alone. When there's no one around to hold him to a higher standard, it becomes easy to slip into bad habits. It starts small, skipping a workout, slacking off at work, making excuses instead of taking responsibility. But over time, those small things add up. Without accountability, discipline fades. Without discipline, progress stops. And without progress, life starts feeling stagnant. A strong circle of friends will push a man to be better. They'll challenge him when he's slipping. They'll call him out when he's making excuses. But a man with no friends has no one to keep him in check. And before he knows it, he's stuck in a cycle of mediocrity. Another dangerous thing about isolation is that it makes a man comfortable with the bare minimum. He stops striving for more because there's nobody around him setting an example of what's possible. When you surround yourself with motivated, driven people, it pushes you to level up. You see your friends succeeding, and it makes you want to do the same. You hear their stories, their struggles, their comebacks, and it inspires you to keep going. But when you're alone, when you don't have anyone around you pushing you, it's easy to settle. You start believing that where you are is good enough, even when you know deep down you were made for more. Isolation also makes failure feel permanent. When a man has no friends, setbacks hit harder. A loss feels like the end of the world because there's no one around to remind him that failure is temporary. A mistake feels like a defining moment because there's no one there to say, hey man, shake it off and keep going. Everybody fails. Everybody falls short. But the men who get back up the fastest are the ones who have people in their corner. The ones who don't, they sit in their failure longer than they need to. They dwell on it, they let it define them. And eventually, they convince themselves that success just isn't for them. Loneliness also leads to bad decisions. When a man has no one to turn to, he starts making choices based on emotions rather than wisdom. He reacts instead of reflecting. He lets frustration, anger, or sadness drive his decisions instead of logic and patience. A real friend will stop you before you make a choice you'll regret. A real friend will give you a reality check when you're thinking irrationally. But a man with no friends has no filter for his emotions, and that can lead him down a dangerous path. At the core of all of this is one simple truth. No man is meant to do life alone. The mind is powerful, but it can also be misleading. Without the right people around, it's easy to fall into patterns of self-doubt, negativity, and bad habits. A strong circle of friends isn't just about having people to hang out with. It's about having people who keep you sharp, who keep you focused, who keep you from getting stuck in your own head. Because when you're alone, your mind can become either your greatest weapon or your greatest enemy. And without the right voices speaking into your life, it's easy to let it turn against you. Success means nothing if you have no one to share it with. A man can work his entire life, build a career, make money, buy the house, drive the car. But if he's doing it all alone, what's the point? Too many men spend years chasing success only to realize too late that they neglected the relationships that actually give life meaning. They grind, they hustle, they focus on achieving their goals, thinking that once they make it, happiness will follow. But success without people to celebrate with is empty. There's a reason why some of the wealthiest, most powerful men in the world still struggle with depression. It's not because they didn't accomplish anything. It's because success without connection feels hollow. A man can have all the money in the world, but if he comes home to an empty house, if there's nobody excited to see him, if he has no one to share his victories with, it starts to feel meaningless. That's why real success isn't just about what you build, it's about who you build it with. A man with no friends can reach the top of the mountain and still feel like he's at the bottom. He can work hard, accomplish great things, but without relationships, there's no real joy in it. Because success is meant to be shared. It's meant to be experienced together. The best moments in life are the ones where you're surrounded by people who genuinely care about you, who celebrate with you, who remind you of how far you've come. Without that, even the biggest achievements feel small. Some men think they can do it all alone. They believe they don't need anybody. They convince themselves that as long as they're winning, nothing else matters. But the truth is, life was never meant to be a solo mission. The greatest victories in history weren't accomplished by one man alone. They were accomplished by teams, by brotherhoods, by communities. No king ruled without trusted advisors. No champion won without a coach. No leader rose without a strong support system. Every great man in history had people beside him, people who helped him stay focused, people who pushed him forward, people who celebrated his victories and helped him through his struggles. A man with no friends might think he's independent, but in reality, he's missing out on one of the most important aspects of life: connection. Because at the end of the day, success isn't about how much money you make or how many goals you achieve. It's about the impact you leave on others. It's about the people who will remember you, who will speak your name with respect, who will tell stories about the moments you shared together. It's about the relationships you built along the way. Think about it. When you look back on your life, the moments that stand out aren't just the accomplishments. They're the people who were there, the laughter, the late-night talks, the struggles you overcame together, the support you received when times were tough. Those are the things that make a man's life rich. Those are the things that give success meaning. But a man who spends his life chasing success while ignoring relationships ends up with nothing but regret. There's a difference between winning alone and winning together. Winning alone feels temporary. The excitement fades quickly because there's nobody there to celebrate with. But when you win with the people you love, when you achieve something and have your friends, your family, your brother standing beside you, that's when it really matters. That's when success feels real. Because it's not just about what you achieved, it's about the journey you took to get there, the people who stood beside you, the relationships that were built along the way. A man with no friends also has no one to remind him why he started. The road to success is hard. It comes with setbacks, failures, and moments when giving up seems like the easiest option. But the right people in your life won't let you quit. They'll remind you of your purpose. They'll push you when you're tired. They'll encourage you when you start doubting yourself. A man who tries to do it all alone will struggle longer, fall harder, and take longer to get back up. But a man with real friends, he has a team. And a man with a strong team can withstand any storm. Even the toughest men need people to lean on. Even the most driven men need encouragement. Even the most successful men need relationships. Because at the end of the day, nobody remembers you for what you owned. They remember you for who you were. They remember the impact you had on their lives. They remember the moments you shared. And if a man spends his whole life chasing success, but neglects to build meaningful relationships, then no matter how much he accomplishes, he still loses.